Welcome back to Think, the podcast with me, Dylan Schreibman. I'm so happy that you're here. So glad that you can join me for another conversation. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. This is episode 9. Today's topic we're thinking about me moving to Los Angeles. So let's get into it. Thank you for joining me. I'm so glad that you're here. Again, this podcast is a safe space for the LGBTQ plus community and its allies. So if you just need to take a moment or just want to be a part of the conversation, I am here. Last podcast, I discussed leaving Los Angeles, which I cannot believe it's already been, let me do math. I cannot believe it's already been 4 months since I've departed. And now we're going to rewind to the beginning. I think it's good to reflect and be grateful. And I'm very grateful for the time I spent in Los Angeles. I spent 5.5 years there. So it definitely has a part of my heart and is a part of my story. And so I want to get into it. I want to get into moving and why I decided to move there, which we'll get there in a little bit. But before we do that, I do want to express my gratitude, as I was saying, for being able to have the opportunity to even live in one of the biggest cities, not even in the United States, but in the world. One of the, if not the entertainment capital of the world. So my gratefulness now that I left is definitely there. And my gratitude and happiness about the city is definitely there. I miss it a little bit too much, maybe, but I'm glad that I got to experience 5.5 years there and meet so many cool people. And some of them became my lifelong friends. And I met so many soul connections in friendships, and I'm so grateful for that. I could get emotional talking about that. It's been a long year, and just to reflect for a moment and be grateful that I got the opportunity to live in a city as magnificent and great as Los Angeles is just the moment I need. Moving there was, I would maybe call it an impulse decision. I don't know if impulse is a word, but it was a very quick decision, just like I left. Uh, I left. I thought about leaving for a while. I've discussed this before, and I never pulled the trigger. And then when I decided to pull the trigger, I literally left not even with in a month. So moving there was a little bit longer of a selected date, but it was one of those things which I'll get into where I just went for it. I was just to start the story, the backstory is I was just a college graduate, I think less than a year. Yeah, because I came back to Maryland after I graduated college to figure out what I want to do and was contemplating moving because I knew the town that I grew up in was not for me, especially after moving to college and seeing a different world and being introduced to a different landscape. I knew that I wanted to move to a big city. I've always been a city guy. And my cousin lived in Los Angeles and still does, but at the time, and they always told me, you should move. You should move. The city will fit you. The city is just for you. It was one of those things where someone makes a comment to you and you really don't think much or think deep into it at the time. You're kind of just like, okay, okay. Like, you know, the city is for me. Yay. Fast forward 5.5 years, I can see why they said it. And it's one of those comments that stick out to me now. They were always telling me, move to LA, move to LA. And I kept putting it off. I wanted to save a bit of money after college before I moved. So I was like, I'll get to it. Like, I'll get to it. I'll think about it. And my life story, keep procrastinating and putting things off, which is something I'm trying not to do anymore. I've done that too much in my life. And I kept thinking about it. And my brother was on the same boat, and we both kind of were interested in moving to Los Angeles, but wouldn't pull the trigger, so to speak. I told this story before, and it is a moment that changed my life, and I'm so grateful for, and I'll remember forever. My dad knew my brother and I were interested in moving cross country. And to our benefit, my parents have always wanted to do a cross country road trip. Side note, if you're my future husband or you're my friends, please don't take me on one that is not for me, but some people love it. And anyway, so it kind of worked to knock out, I guess, two birds with one stone. And my dad was like, if you guys want to do it, like, you need to do it. Sat us down and he opened up a calendar and he said, pick a date. He turned to me and my brother and he said, pick a date. And whatever date that you select, you're moving. And we had a conversation about it and he told my both my brother and I would rather you go and move back within a year or two and know that you tried, know that you gave it all, your all, instead of looking back in 5 to 10 years and saying, I wish I did that when I was young in my 20s. And at the time, it was scary. I remember booking a flight after we picked the date. That's when it really became official. Like, oh my God, we're actually going. We're actually doing this. We're leaving our small town to move to a big city that we at the time knew one person in, and really no other thing going on. That lesson is so important to me. And really, one of the biggest lessons that I've learned in my life is go for it now. And that way you don't regret it later. I remember my sister had moved out of state. So she was a big resource for my brother and I as we were making the move and decided to make the move. And she told us the same thing, like, go for it. Like, you can always come back if it doesn't work out for you. You always have a place here. Like, you might as well go for it and live your dreams. And so she was a big resource. I was always grateful for my family stepping in and supporting both of us. And that kind of just started the process. It was kind of just, okay, you booked your flight, you picked a date, you booked your flight, you're going. And I remember as the days got closer, the official date we moved was February 26th, 2019. It's one of those dates like your wedding date. I will always remember. Hopefully, one day I'll have a wedding date to remember. I think I already know what day I'm getting married. I'm single, but anyway, that's another podcast. Back to Los Angeles. I remember as it got closer and we began to pack up our things and get ready to move, the anxiety I felt was insane. I'm an anxious person and I'm growing out of it, but especially at that age, I don't know if you ever grow out of anxiety, but especially at that age, I didn't manage it very well. I really struggled with overthinking and being anxious about things and always thinking, doubting myself, thinking I'm not good enough, thinking things weren't going to work out. And here I am in a situation where I'm taking a huge risk. I'm moving across the country. I'm glad I have my brother with me, my rock, my best friend, to that made it a little bit easier. We moved without pretty much anything, without knowing anything, and it was one of those risks I took in my life of, okay, we're going to do this. And we worked for a few more months after we decided, and then as it got closer, I remember being dropped off at the airport. I remember the flight. I remember, but the thing I remember the most is my parents had flown or drove cross country, as I said. They wanted to do a cross country trip, so they drove my brother and I's car out to Los Angeles, which was a big help with some of our stuff. And then my brother and I took a flight to Los Angeles. I remember meeting them at the airport, and they were with us for a few days. Thank God, I'll get into that. That was definitely God looking out for us. But I remember them, the thing I remember most is after they helped us out, which I'll get into, they, I remember my brother and I dropping them off at the airport to go back to Maryland and that feeling of, okay, now it is just us two in the car. Because when you first move to a city and your parents are there, it kind of feels like a vacation and you're taking a little bit of a family vacation and it's fun and, you know, not a big life change. And then all of a sudden you're hit with, oh, this is real. Like, it really is just the two. And we decided to do this. I remember that ride home like it was yesterday. It will be one of the things I remember for the rest of my life. And I didn't know how it was going to go at the time. I had no idea if I was going to make it. I had no idea how long I was going to be able to stay, if I was going to make anything. I moved without a job lined up. I left my job here, which was a customer service position, so it wasn't a big deal to leave, but still it was income. And so I left without a job, not a lot of money saved up, especially to be comfortable in Los Angeles. I remember knowing, like I said, one family member, no one else. I remember the only thing we did have was an apartment lined up in downtown Los Angeles. But then this is God again looking out for us. When we got there, the day of, my parents were still there. The apartment that my brother and I had agreed to move into was different in pictures versus what we saw. We saw a nice furnished apartment. It said the one, because there were different selections, and it said the one that we had selected would be furnished. And when we got there, it was not as big as it said it was going to be. It basically was smaller than a college dorm with nothing. And I even pulled up, what my brother and I signed up for, and he was, trying to give us the runaround. Thank God, and this is God looking out for me, I believe. We didn't sign the lease, and we were able to say, no, we're actually not going to sign this. I don't think the guy was too happy, but don't false advertise. And so thank God we got out of that because that would have been, I don't know the word, that would have been very difficult to deal with as a living situation. And it just felt like it wasn't meant to be, which thank God my parents were there and we were able to stay in their hotel for a few days. But it made the first few days very nerve-wracking because we literally had like 2 or 3 days to find an apartment. I also am glad that we did not sign up for that apartment. I'll tell you why in a little bit and how things I think always work out. Wow, this podcast is a reminder of, especially right now, of things always work out. I remember we had 2 or 3 days, and luckily we found an apartment in the middle of Hollywood, right off of Sunset. It was a beautiful apartment, and my brother and I were able to sign the lease and get that apartment and be in the center of Hollywood, and which worked out for us later. But thank God it all worked out. And then my parents left, and we had that car ride, and it's still one of the biggest risks I've ever taken in my life. I tend to take big risks in life. Um, Not knowing if they're going to work out. I'm just thinking back. I'm like, oh my God, I've done that a few times, including right now in my life. To pick up, I was grateful the first apartment didn't work out, and we were able to move into a better apartment and start our life. And I remember because we had vacation in Los Angeles the April before we moved, April of 2018. And we instantly both decided, oh my God, we love it here. We need to come back. But a vacation, or we need to live here. But a vacation is way different than living in a city. Thank God. And God always works things out that everything was settled. We were able to find a place. We were able, before my parents left. And now we're really in the days of Los Angeles and exploring the city. I want to reflect back to why I moved, just in case somebody, was thinking of moving to Los Angeles or another big city of their mind and they're going, back and forth about it. I want to, maybe this will resonate with you. I remember, besides my cousin telling me, you need to move, I think God puts some people in your life and some people come across in your life to tell you things that you should listen to. And that was one of them. It definitely worked out for me, and I'm glad they said something to me. I think the first reason why I moved is my career. I think that's the main reason why I moved to Los Angeles. Where I'm from and where I currently am is not a big entertainment capital. It's not really what I wanted at the time. That's what I really was ambitious about and wanted to do. And so it was either really Los Angeles or New York to me since I had gone to college in New Jersey and got to experience a little bit of interning in New York. And I always told myself, I love New York City, but I always told myself in college, and especially moving 10 months or so after college, I was in the mindset of, I love New York City, but I don't see myself ever living there. And that's the takeaway I got when I was interning there and, going to college a train ride away. So I was like, well, it's Los Angeles. And Los Angeles has, I was also thinking of what I wanted to do, and Los Angeles kind of fit more of the entertainment I wanted to do at the time versus what New York did. I, and still am, but I was very ambitious, I think sometimes to a detriment, to chase after my career goals. So that was the main reason I moved to Los Angeles. I was like, I can chase after my career goals. I can network with people like me or people who want to do the same thing. I also have always been a city boy. I said that I am not a small town guy. And so that also was another reason. I was like, I like the city. I like the pace of it. Even though Los Angeles and New York are two different cities and act in two different ways, or I don't know if act is the right word, have two different atmospheres. I was also young and wanting to experience things. I was 23, I believe, when I moved, 22 or 23. I want to say 23. I, doing the math in my head, no, if I moved February 26th of 2019, I was 22 when I moved. I turned 23 when I was in Los Angeles. That was my first birthday. But so I was 22 when I moved. I wanted to experience things at the time. And I think the city taught me a lot, and there's other reasons I ended up moving there that happened after, which is always good. And I think I've talked about those before in my leaving episode if you want to watch that. But briefly, it taught me to be comfortable with my sexuality and getting to experience a lot of gay culture, which leads me to my first days of Los Angeles. Let's take the story back to my brother and I had found an apartment. We dropped our parents off the airport, had that real car ride, like very real car ride of like, oh crap, this is it. Like we're here. Our parents have left to go back home. Like it's literally just us now, basically being dropped off in the middle of a city. I remember getting to the apartment, being nervous, anxious. But there's stuff about those first days that I'll really never forget. The conversations my brother and I had, or um, the activities we would do together when it was just us and we were trying to make friends in the first few weeks. Those will always be memories for me and things I always look back on because it's like where I started. I was very lucky, and this goes back to my earlier thing of I'm glad the first apartment didn't work out. I think God was watching over me. I was very lucky that one of my best friends from college moved to Los Angeles 3 weeks later. I did not know she was moving until I announced or posted on Instagram that I was moving to Los Angeles. She DM'd me and was like, "Hey, like I'm actually moving to LA like next month." And I was like, this is awesome. Like, we'll, be able to know somebody, and I'll be able to introduce my brother to her, and, we'll all be able to be friends. And so I think that's also God's grace and love that the first apartment didn't work out because we would have been downtown. And that location just wouldn't have been convenient with the variables and what was going on with all of us at the time. I don't think we would have reconnected and got to hang out as much as we did. And now she knows who she is. We're very, if she watches, we're very, very close friends now. And I don't think, and we've talked about this before, even when we were in Hollywood, I don't think we would have been if the downtown apartment worked out. That's God. That is God leading you. And so I think because she ended up living on the other side of Hollywood. So we were within walking distance of each other. And we actually, while we both were looking to assimilate into LA and get our careers going, we were all able to hang out. And I remember in those early days, my friend and I would go to coffee shops together and search for jobs and do career stuff. And we were able to do a lot of that, like with coffee shops in Hollywood, because of being so close together. So that was really exciting and really eased my nerves a little bit that I knew somebody else and we were able to, have a bit of company and know somebody. And that led me to, I remember she knew somebody at the time who we all became friends with for the first few years, like that like a group of people. And we kind of assimilated into that group for a few years. And I think that kind of was supposed to happen, I think was meant to happen because it kind of gave my brother and I the lowdown on the party culture. Because my brother and I really weren't aware of, everything when we moved. We were just 22 years old. Um, Social media I think was big, but wasn't as big as it was now. Like you can get on and be like, Los Angeles, what's there to do? I don't think it was as big when my brother and I moved. I think Instagram was popping, but this was 2019, so this was before like TikTok. Oh my God, I sound old and like I'm dating myself. But this was before TikTok really took off over the pandemic. We moved to LA just before the COVID pandemic happened. So this was before that. So it really wasn't. So I think meeting her and being able to assimilate into this group a little bit was what was meant to happen because that showed us the party days. And I was 23 at the time, or turned 23 that year. Girl, I wanted to party. You know what I was saying? It was a lot of fun. So meeting that group was a blessing in disguise. I didn't know it at the time because once we kind of assimilated and started hanging out with the group, besides the house parties and everything, which was fun, we went to West Hollywood a lot. And if you've listened to my podcast before or you just know Los Angeles, you know, but if you don't, just to give a small, I don't like to mansplain. So just to give, I'm not that person, but just in case you don't know, West Hollywood's like the gay city or where the gay culture really is in Los Angeles. And it's where all the gay bars are. And it's just one of the biggest gay capitals, I would say, in the world. And maybe I just love it and I'm biased. But if you are gay and you're traveling, it's where, you hang out and where the culture really exists. And so at the time, there were a few gay men in the friend group that we were hanging out with. Again, I wasn't out at the time. Yeah, this was before I came out. I wasn't out when I moved to Los Angeles, but we would all go to West Hollywood and I got to see the culture and the bars were fun even then, even though I was straight, in my heterosexual place. I I think I knew I obviously was going to be coming out soon, but I still was able to experience the culture and get a taste of it. And I think that made me more comfortable and feel safe to come out. And getting to experience the culture before I came out was, I think, part of my path. And I think meeting that group was part of my path because it taught me some other lessons in it, but the one that is applicable here is it taught me to feel comfortable in my sexuality. I unfortunately was the group that we were hanging out with. I think when I came out, I really wasn't hanging out with anymore. I think I kind of grown into a different friend group and the friends that I'm friends with today. But not all of us ended on a bad note per se. Some of us just had distance and, just grew apart. It wasn't anything bad or drama filled with most of the group. So, but I think even though I didn't get to share that accomplishment with some of them, which in my life, which would have been nice to be honest, just because, and I don't think I realized it in that present moment, but looking back in the past, or reflecting on the past, I think it would have been nice to share that moment with them just because they were the ones that really made me comfortable with being able to come out because they exposed me to the culture and made me feel safe and were not judgmental to the people who were already out in the group. So it was a safe space. I think the whole city has helped as well, just being in the city and being in a different culture and really getting to experience different things, I think helped as well. And the atmosphere of the city helped as well. It helped me get exposed to some of that. And so to share that accomplishment with them would have been fun getting, for them to be part of that process. But, I think some people are put in your life to teach you things. And I think that was one of those moments where they were put in my life to teach me that and give me the courage to. And then I was able to do that with the new people that were in my life. it was just a self-expression that I learned there and to be comfortable with myself. And I got to meet so many people who sh shaped who I was and kind of put me on the path to finding out who I was and giving me different experiences and different cultures and different lessons. It was really exciting and really allowed me to step into myself a little bit and continue to grow and continue to feel comfortable expressing myself and wearing what I want. And oh, I'm just missing the city as I say all this. I do want to say, and I always think the song Pink Pony Club hits really hard now because I was in Los Angeles when it was released, but I think moving out of the city, if I listen to it now and you actually listen to the lyrics, go listen to the lyrics if you're watching this. It really hits different for me now. If you listen to the song, you will know why. I think I want to end off by just saying if you're listening and you are thinking about moving to a big city from a small town, and no matter what age you are, move. If you want to move, move. It is easily a top five decision I've made in my life. It's scary, especially in the circumstances I was in. It was very risky. But if you have no responsibilities holding you down and you are able to move, move. It will be the best decision you will make. And I promise you, life will figure itself out. It seems scary. You might doubt yourself in the first few days because you're like, oh my God, I'm actually here. Like now I actually have to go figure it out, but life will figure it out. Life will figure itself out and it will all work out. And within, the first year, you'll look back in a year and be like, oh my God, I'm so glad I did this. Like, could you imagine I could still be sitting if I didn't pull the trigger? But now I'm here and way happier and I've grown so much and met so many cool people and had so many cool experiences just because I pulled the trigger and just because I moved. I do want to wrap this up, but I am glad that we get to talk about my first days of moving to Los Angeles. It made me really grateful and really happy and really miss the city, to be honest. It's always fun to reflect and see how far I've come and see how far I've grown and always look back on the first days of something that was challenging and you got through it. It's always so good to reflect on to know that you will get through it again. Remember, as I said in the beginning, this podcast is a safe space for my LGBTQ plus community and its allies. Even if you just want to sit for a moment, I'm here for you. I'll see you next time, okay?